I'm standing right now on the Kansas side. My photographer is over on the Missouri side, and of course, this is State Line Road, which is the dividing line. GM owners should be getting a letter from the company by April 21st, if they haven't already, warning them about the flawed ignition switch. It's kind of hard for you to see it, but I'm actually standing on a deck that was attached to a mobile home tonight. The mobile home is gone. The deck remains, and it's just part of the remaining debris. Fortunately, Burke does have insurance, but tomorrow he'll start going through some of the estimates on what he needs to replace and how much it will cost. He believes that this is going to be the most expensive item. Live tonight on State Line Road in Missouri. Dave Jordan, KCTV 5 News.
Original complaint.
25-year-old Kai Poehler is a PhD student at Mizzou. Instead of poring over notes or textbooks, he's walking us through his toughest assignment yet. 3 years spent trying to clean up his credit report.
This is something that's been extremely frustrating, something that's just a constant worry to try to get corrected.
Kai learned about his credit report problems in 2010 when he applied for a home loan. The lender's rejection letter says, "It appears another person's credit history and accounts are intermingled with yours."
My report was basically encompassing both myself and my brother on the same report.
Kelsey R. Poehler.
Despite the different birth dates, only Kai's social security number appears. Along with Kai's real student debt amount appears Kelsey's $249,000 bill for medical school.
For that to happen, it just seems like a total joke in what's going on in relation to the bureaus. Complaint was made.
Kai did exactly what the credit bureaus tell you to do, disputed it in writing with proof that the nearly $250,000 debt belongs to his brother. That didn't work.
The consumers are helpless, and many of them have not a clue when this has happened to them.
Donna Perkins owns Kansas City Credit Services. Kai hired her after months of trying to fix things on his own.
You know, for over a year and a half, we fought that battle with Kai. And that is not normal procedures. Normal repair time for most people are, around 6 to 12 months.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Perkins did make some progress, convincing Experian and TransUnion to remove the erroneous debt. Equifax refused to budge.
And even with it going clear to the AG's office here in the state of Missouri, they still replied back to the AG's office saying, "We have checked this multiple times, it's his."
KCTV5 decided to take Kai's plight to U.S. Senator Claire McCaskill. The Missouri lawmaker has been a staunch critic of credit reporting errors.
They make mistakes all the time. In fact, they make mistakes that really impact people's lives.
Senator McCaskill immediately connected with Kai's situation.
Their names are similar, their addresses used to be the same, and their social security numbers are almost identical. So it's understandable that the mistake might occur. What's inexcusable is it took a year and a half, 18 months, for them to in fact unmix that file and correct it. And even today, he still has one mistake in his file.
McCaskill's staff stepped in to finally fix that last mistake. They called Equifax and the credit bureau called us. The mistake is now being addressed.
You shouldn't have to get a United States Senator to fix it for you. You should be able to fix it yourself quickly and efficiently. And that's why we've got to hold them accountable.
And what McCaskill is talking about is penalties when the credit bureaus get it wrong. In fact, just this past summer, an Oregon woman won an $18 million judgment against Equifax. She says they damaged her reputation with erroneous information. Dave? Well, Brad, this is the 180-page case file, and in this file, the officer in question said he feared for his life here at 13th in Baltimore. And now two people who are steps away from that chilling scene, they are weighing in on what they saw. This is video of Kansas City police officer Donald Hubbard trying to restrain and arrest firefighter Anthony Bruno after he got into a fight with a cab driver over the cost of a ride. It was shot by Jason Reinhardt, who was leaving a club near 13th in Baltimore the morning of December 1st.
I didn't really know what was happening, but it was probably going to be a legal matter, and it would just been his word against the other.
The video shows Hubbard being hit several times by an intoxicated Bruno. Bruno and his wife had just left their wedding reception. During the struggle, Hubbard pulled his gun and shot Bruno twice. He would later tell investigators, "I don't know how many times he struck me, but I started to black out and saw lines across my eyes. He continued to strike me, and I started to lose consciousness, and I believe the suspect was not going to stop hitting me until he killed me. I feared for my life." Reinhardt disagrees.
I think the cop got himself into a situation that he shouldn't have been in and wasn't prepared to deal with, and then had to escape it in a means in which someone lost their life.
Ashley Jansen, a nurse, also happened to be on the scene that morning. She too saw the incident.
Hearing the shots, I just thought trauma and gunshots to the chest or to the abdomen. And so at that point, everything else went out the window and I just responded.
Bruno's wife, Stephanie, later admitted to investigators that her husband had been drinking that night. According to the police report, she said, "He was drinking because we were celebrating our wedding. I couldn't tell you what he was drinking. As far as how much he had at the reception, I could not tell you. He was somewhat intoxicated, but he wasn't slurring his words or falling over." Now, an autopsy showed Bruno's blood alcohol content was 2.21. 0.08 is the legal limit. We did reach out to the fire department and the police department. Neither would give us a comment. We're live tonight at 13th in Baltimore. Dave Jordan, KCTV 5 News. Well, Karen, as you know, the Kansas City Metro stretches across 2 states. I'm standing right now on the Kansas side. My photographer is over on the Missouri side, and of course, this is State Line Road, which is the dividing line. Now, this big competition for businesses across both of those states, that is starting to heat up, and that is what we call tonight the border war. Overland Park and Prairie Village are 2 Kansas towns that benefit from their close proximity to Missouri. And in recent years, several businesses have set up shops in those cities, leaving Missouri behind for lower tax rates. While some may call this healthy competition, others see it as bad business.
We shouldn't have some type of race to the bottom to try to create jobs that don't create any type of quality of life.
If that sounds like sour grapes from a Missouri politician, consider this. His colleague across the state line agrees.
Our local business leaders from both sides of the state line need to step up and really say, hey, it's time to stop and reevaluate, because at the end of the day, we're not really doing any favors for anybody here.
Kansas Governor Sam Brownback has embarked on an aggressive tax-cutting policy, which sweetened the pot by offering incentives to businesses willing to relocate. Missouri passed a similar tax measure, which Governor Jay Nixon recently vetoed. Critics and some economists say tax incentives prevent revenue from going into schools and local roads, which ends up hurting both states in the long term. That was the focus of this UMKC forum.
In terms of the message to economics students, lowering taxes, it's which taxes and at what expense. Questionable in terms of where our revenue is going to come from.
Now, the Missouri State Legislature is considering whether to override that veto, but it appears unlikely tonight. And as for those politicians calling for an end of the border war, they say that the Metro has enough room for everyone to compete. They just want this to end and say that everyone should be working together. We're live tonight on State Line Road in Missouri. Dave Jordan, KCTV 5 News. Freedom of the press or the public's right to privacy. State lawmakers will soon debate whether the government and news organizations can deploy drones over public land. A no vote could threaten a college program that is already using this technology.
Missourians should be assured that their basic rights to privacy and their property rights are not being violated by the state, or really at all.
Representative Casey Guernsey made that statement yesterday morning at a last-minute hearing on his bill to limit the use of drones in Missouri. The hearing came after we alerted him to a fledgling drone program taking flight at the University of Missouri. These drones don't come equipped with weaponry to maim or kill, but with cameras which capture nearly everything from above.
We're talking about flying these things over public lands, waterways, open fields, doing like agricultural, environmental reporting.
Scott Pham with KBIA Radio at Mizzou received a $25,000 grant to build these drones as part of a journalistic experiment. It's something he felt compelled to pursue as the technology became more accessible.
When I heard about how common drones were getting in the hobbyist circles and how much easier it is to get up in the air and how much cheaper it is to get up in the air than it ever has been before, I just got attracted to it.
Guernsey feels no such love for what Pham and by extension Mizzou has been doing.
You've got to be kidding me. That's enormously disturbing, actually, to hear about.
KCTV 5 News sat down with Guernsey to discuss House Bill 46, a measure banning the use of drones by all but law enforcement. Guernsey says he wrote the bill in response to reports of the EPA flying over farmland in Iowa and Nebraska. He was unaware of Mizzou's drone program until our interview.
If I'm hearing about drones being used to gather information from a news standpoint, I would say that would be at the top of my list of concerns.
At yesterday's hearing, Guernsey reiterated his concerns.
Have a warrant.
At least 4 spokesmen from several organizations, including the ACLU and the Missouri Farm Bureau, testified in support of Guernsey's bill. But some committee members weren't sold on the ban.
I can see a lot of different aircraft going over, and I'm just sitting there thinking, what are we looking to the skies to see who's coming after us?
If we started making laws based on all everybody talks about, we would have some wacko laws.
After the hour-long hearing, the Mizzou contingent tried its level best to convince Guernsey the motives behind the program are not sinister.
At no point do we intend to fly it over land that has, for which we don't have the permission to fly on.
Guernsey stood his ground.
I think that we have a responsibility in the legislature to make sure that that technology isn't being used irresponsibly.
Representative Guernsey says his bill has not been finalized, which means that language could still be added to spare the academic use of drones, but stop the government and journalists from using them. Mizzou has not issued a statement on what, if any, measures it will take to block this bill. We'll keep following the story.
Hi, Dave.
Hey there, Karen and Brad. You know, this was not just a film for the people involved. This was a labor of love to tell the story about a man who changed the face of baseball forever. Amid the glamour and celebrity sightings at the premiere of 42 here in the Northland was heartfelt praise and adulation for the film that finally told the story of baseball great Jackie Robinson.
It's a great film, historically accurate, inspiring, and hopefully people will walk away with it empowered.
Chadwick Boseman plays the pioneering player who integrated the major leagues in 1947. It was a much sought-after role, and Boseman says the pressure was on.
Although, you know, I was worried about it being intimidating, and you know, I was worried about living up to what other people felt. I also wanted the pressure and to rise to the occasion. And he did just that, according to his co-star Harrison Ford.
I think he was fantastic. He worked very hard to acquire the baseball skills, and I think he's a very talented actor.
Many in attendance tonight were moved by the film's premiere in Kansas City, where Jackie Robinson played in the Negro Leagues for the Kansas City Monarchs 2 years before he went to the Dodgers.
A lot of these guys I knew personally, grew up with them as uncles and so forth, and they would be so overjoyed and just overcome by this outpouring of love.
And there are still some screenings going on tonight right behind me in 3 of the movie houses over there. Now, many of us, of course, heard the story of Jackie Robinson integrating the major leagues. I certainly did, growing up in Evansfield Apartments, where the stadium was once housed. But Harrison Ford told me tonight that he believes that this movie will provide an emotional connection and that people will be able to feel what it was like to be Jackie Robinson back in those days of baseball. We are live at AMC Theaters in the Northland. Dave Jordan, KCTV 5 News.